They didn't use green screens. These war movies were filmed where the real bullets flew, where soldiers actually fell, and where history was carved into the land. From the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of Guadalcanal, these 21 films bring war to life by shooting on the actual battlefields. The result? A chilling, powerful cinematic experience that feels less like fiction and more like memory itself. The Longest Day. D-Day changed the course of World War II, and The Longest Day brought it back to life exactly where it happened. Rather than simulate history, this sprawling war epic went straight to the beaches of Normandy, where the Allies stormed German defenses on June 6, 1944. The production had unprecedented access to Utah and Omaha Beach, still haunted by the past. Local villagers who had lived through the invasion were extras. Veterans consulted on battle choreography. You're not just watching actors storm the shore, you're seeing them move through history. Every bomb crater, bunker, and grain of sand carries weight. It wasn't just a movie, it was a resurrection. The authenticity chills you because you know men really died right there in that very tide. For many viewers, especially veterans, it didn't feel like cinema. It felt like memory. Letters from Iwo Jima. Few filmmakers are ever allowed to film on Iwo Jima, sacred Japanese soil soaked in the blood of 20,000 soldiers. But Clint Eastwood was granted rare access for Letters from Iwo Jima, the harrowing companion piece to Flags of Our Fathers. What makes this film unforgettable is not just its Japanese perspective, it's the atmosphere, the ashen black sand, the sulfur-scented air, the real bunkers and tunnels once filled with terrified men. The ghosts of history linger in every frame. Eastwood didn't glamorize war. He let the island tell the story. Iwo Jima becomes a character, hostile, silent, grieving. Filming there transformed the movie into something more spiritual than cinematic. You don't just see the battle, you feel the suffocation, the dread, the sacrifice. The result is one of the most human and haunting war films ever made. A Bridge Too Far. Some war stories are so bold they sound like fiction. A Bridge Too Far tells the real story of Operation Market Garden, and it was filmed right where that failed Allied gamble played out, in Arnhem, Nijmegen, and Eindhoven. Instead of recreating these Dutch cities, director Richard Attenborough filmed amid the original bridges, canals, and town squares. Local citizens participated. Some had lived through the 1944 operation themselves. The film's authenticity is breathtaking. When tanks roll through Nijmegen or paratroopers descend over real fields, you feel the war's proximity. It's not just the visuals, it's the atmosphere, the same cobblestones, the same wind across the river. The blend of historical accuracy and emotional storytelling makes it one of the most vivid portrayals of a military operation gone tragically wrong. Gallipoli. When Peter Weir made Gallipoli, he wanted to honor the Anzac soldiers who died on Turkey's rocky shores in 1915. So he brought the film crew to the very cliffs and beaches where Australian and New Zealand forces landed in one of WWI's most tragic campaigns. The wind-swept hills, jagged terrain, and blue Aegean Sea are not set dressing. They're sacred ground. You can feel the ghosts of the past in every shot. The realism is staggering. Soldiers sprint across the same sand, stumble through trenches dug in the same earth. The story follows innocence, crushed by senseless war, and the location adds a layer of sorrow that no studio could manufacture. Gallipoli isn't just history, it's hallowed ground, and the film honors every footstep. Come and See. No film captures the sheer trauma of war like Come and See, and part of that horror comes from where it was filmed, the same Belarusian villages that were destroyed by Nazi forces during WW2. The locations weren't replicas, they were actual sites of massacres. The crew used locals, many of whom had lived through the war. Burned-out churches, graveyards, and forests tell their own story. The ground is scorched with memory. The film's protagonist, a young boy, moves through hellscapes that once hosted unspeakable, real-world tragedies. That authenticity bleeds into every frame. It doesn't just show you war, it scars you. Filming on those real sites transforms Come and See from a film into a memorial. It's not just about remembering the dead, it's about feeling their last breath. Tora! 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 Few moments in American history are as devastating as the attack on Pearl Harbor, and Tora, Tora, Tora took audiences back to December 7, 1941, by filming in the real harbor itself. The production team gained access to active military bases and historic locations, including Ford Island and Battleship Row, where the skies once thundered with bombs. This wasn't a soundstage simulation, this was sacred ground. The hangars, the decks, the oil-slicked water, it was all real. Even vintage warships were brought back to life. Unlike later dramatizations, this film balanced both American and Japanese perspectives with sobering detail. It's clinical, historical, and heartbreakingly real. Veterans who saw it often left in silence. Because when those planes dive in the movie, they're swooping over the same blue waters where thousands once died. It doesn't feel like a Hollywood spectacle. It feels like a somber reenactment where memory and film collide. The Battle of Britain. In 1940, the skies over southern England became a battleground between the Royal Air Force and the Luftwaffe. The Battle of Britain didn't just tell this story, it went back to the actual RAF bases, airfields, and countryside where the conflict unfolded. Many of the airfields seen in the film, like Duxford and Hawkinge, were operational during the real battle. Vintage Spitfires and Messerschmitts were flown again for aerial combat sequences that remain unmatched. You're not just watching planes dogfight, you're watching them soar through the real clouds of history. The hangars, control towers, even the barracks were places where young men once waited to scramble. That authenticity humbles the viewer. It reminds us that history isn't abstract. It's terrain, it's architecture, it's sky. And the Battle of Britain brings it back to life without romanticism, just reverence. Downfall. Few war films have dared to take us into the belly of evil quite like Downfall. And what makes it even more chilling is its setting, Berlin itself, where Hitler's empire crumbled. The filmmakers recreated Hitler's bunker and the ruins of the Reich in the same neighborhoods where the real final battles were fought. Some scenes were even shot near the original Führer bunker site. The war-torn architecture, crumbling plaster, and claustrophobic alleys were more than accurate. They were authentic. Berlin's ghosts linger, and the film captures that oppressive despair. There's no glamour here. You feel the city closing in, a regime collapsing under the weight of its crimes. Downfall isn't just a portrait of Hitler's last days, it's a chilling meditation on power unraveling in the very streets that once cheered him. The fact it was shot in those same streets makes it disturbingly intimate. The Thin Red Line. Terrence Malick's. The Thin Red Line is more of a fever dream than a traditional war film, but its power comes from where it was filmed. The Solomon Islands, just miles from where the real Battle of Guadalcanal occurred in 1942. While not shot directly on the bloodiest sites, the surrounding jungles, ridges, and valleys were the same terrain that devoured soldiers during that campaign. The humidity, the relentless insects, the oppressive greenery. It's not just visually authentic, it's spiritually accurate. Malick uses the landscape like a character, lush, indifferent, and unforgiving. Nature dwarfs the soldiers, reminding us that in war, even survival is an accident. You hear insects louder than bullets. You feel the mud grip boots like death. And that deep discomfort is because Malick walked his camera through the same tropical hell that swallowed real lives. This is war cinema as meditation, and the land itself is both muse and memory. Patton. George C. Scott's towering portrayal of General George S. Patton earned him an Oscar, but what grounded the legend was the real-world geography. Patton was filmed across Tunisia and Sicily, retracing the general's boldest campaigns in World War II. The production didn't settle for studio sets. It moved tanks and crews to actual deserts and mountain passes where Patton once commanded. In Tunisia, real battlefields doubled as themselves, giving a visceral weight to each military maneuver. The harsh sunlight, vast landscapes, and ruins weren't designed. They were inherited. You feel Patton's boots echo through the sand where real soldiers once bled. The movie becomes more than a character study. It becomes a march through history. Every panoramic shot feels like the land itself is testifying. And the land doesn't lie. 1917. Sam Mendes's 1917 plunges you into the mud and blood of World War I's Western Front. But what makes it extraordinary is where it was shot. The battle-scarred fields of northern France. Though trenches were meticulously reconstructed, the surrounding farmland, the pockmarked craters, the sodden shell holes, was the very same terrain where British soldiers faced machine gun fire and mustard gas. Extras included local historians and descendants of veterans, lending each frame an emotional heft. As your camera follows Private Schofield on his relentless dash across no man's land, you feel the weight of every soldier who trudged here before, the damp cold, the ever-present threat overhead. Even the sky, heavy with gray clouds, feels authentic to the memory of 1917. Mendes insisted on long takes to capture the claustrophobia and chaos, but it's the genuine landscape that anchors the story in reality. This isn't a recreation. It's a requiem. With every step, you're retracing the doomed journey of those who never made it home. Battle of Naretva. Commissioned by Marshal Tito to commemorate the partisan struggle, Battle of Naretva delivers grand scale with unflinching authenticity by filming on the same rivers and mountains where Yugoslav fighters clashed with Axis powers. When the iconic bridge demolition takes place, it's not a set. It's the actual Naretva River Gorge. Local villagers, some who had witnessed the real battle in 1943, served as extras, their faces etched with memories of loss and resistance. Tanks rumbled across the same defiles once held by both sides. Explosions shook the earth where bombs once fell for real. The raw geology, karst peaks, mist-cloaked valleys, becomes a silent commentator on human courage and sacrifice. Rather than sanitizing the violence, the filmmakers embraced the harsh landscape, capturing the partisans' grit amid unforgiving terrain. The result is a visceral testament to a campaign that reshaped Yugoslavia's identity and a film that refuses to let history be forgotten. Paths of Glory. Stanley Kubrick's searing indictment of military hierarchy, Paths of Glory, gains added power from its 18th-century Bavarian settings, quarries, chateaus, and rolling fields that echo the real trenches of World War I. While not the exact trenches, these limestone quarries around Munich evoke the claustrophobic tunnels and blasted ridges that defined a generation's slaughter. Kubrick chose these backdrops for their oppressive beauty. Stark white walls stained with mud, cavernous spaces once hollowed by forced labor, and brooding skies above open plains. The fortifications seen on screen may be props, but the atmosphere is pure history. When soldiers face the firing squad, the rocky ledges feel like execution grounds that could have existed a century earlier. The formal gardens and ornate architecture juxtapose absurd order against senseless war, underscoring Kubrick's theme of human dignity crushed by bureaucracy. By filming in these authentic locations, he turned an anti-war statement into a haunting visual poem that lingers long after the credits roll. Land of Mine. After World War II, Danish beaches became deadly minefields, and Land of Mine confronts this dark cleanup head-on by filming on those same windswept shores. The soldiers you see trudging through waist-high water and shifting sands once faced real phosphorus and anti-tank mines buried beneath the dunes. Director Martin Zandvliet assembled a cast of young actors who trained with former demoners to understand the fear of every step. The coastline's raw beauty, silver tides, dunes crowned with grass, masks its lethal past. When your heart pounds during each tense sequence, it's not movie magic. It's genuine tension born from filming where lives were lost clearing mines. Villagers still remember the mine blasts echoing off the sea, and that memory seeps into every shot. By embracing the real landscape, Land of Mine transforms into a meditation on guilt, redemption, and the invisible scars left on both terrain and human spirit. The Bridge. In this German classic, The Bridge tells a simple yet devastating story. Schoolboys ordered to defend a bridge against American tanks as World War II ended. What heightens the tragedy is that it was filmed in a small Bavarian village still dotted with ruined bridges and battle debris. Locals remember Allied convoys rolling through their streets in 1945, and that living memory shadows every scene. The titular bridge isn't a Hollywood prop. It's a real crossing over the River Ammer, where rusted tracks and bullet-scarred guardrails still speak of conflict. When you watch teenagers fumbling rifles and setting up machine gun nests, you feel the absurdity and cruelty of war-stealing childhood. The autumnal light and fallen leaves add a poetic sorrow, but the location's authenticity makes the heartbreak concrete. To End All War. Based on the memoirs of a British soldier held by the Japanese, To End All Wars was filmed near the real Death Railway, the 415-kilometer line built with the blood of over 100,000 POWs and Asian laborers. The film crew shot along the River Kwai in Thailand, not far from where prisoners once worked under brutal conditions. The dense jungle, sweltering humidity, and echoing cries of distant wildlife add a crushing realism. You feel the fevered despair that pervaded the camps. The film doesn't glorify endurance. It breaks your heart with every lash, every hunger pang, every silent rebellion. Shooting so close to the actual sites allowed the movie to absorb the land's history. Local guides recounted tales passed down from survivors, and the riverside bamboo huts were built to the original dimensions of POW quarters. This isn't just a war film, it's a spiritual reckoning, filmed where real agony once soaked the soil. Fort Sagan. French colonialism gets the epic treatment in Fort Sagan, and what sets it apart is its raw location, the Sahara Desert of Algeria, where much of France's colonial military history played out. Sweeping dunes, scorched plains, sun that blinds. This was no backlot trickery. The film was shot in ancient stone forts and nomadic encampments on the real ground where French campaigns clashed with desert tribes. The isolation of the location doesn't just serve the visuals, it's symbolic. The character of Charles Sagan isn't just physically lost in the desert, he's morally adrift. By anchoring the story in authentic colonial outposts and real Tuareg territory, the film reflects the scale and futility of trying to impose empires on sand. The vast open landscapes swallow human ambition whole. It's a war film about conquest, filmed where conquest actually stumbled. The Winter War. In the Winter War, Finland's desperate defense against Soviet invasion during World War II is captured with cold-biting precision, because it was shot in the actual Finnish wilderness near the Russian border where the real conflict took place. Snow, silence, sudden death. These weren't studio blizzards. The actors battled sub-zero temperatures in forests and trenches carved into real permafrost. Many of the locations had been battlefield zones just 50 years prior. Local veterans even served as consultants, ensuring that every maneuver, every shell, every frozen tear rang true. The realism borders on survival cinema, frost-bitten fingers, ice-crusted uniforms, frost forming on beards. There's no glamour, only endurance, and that's exactly how it felt in 1939. By filming in the same snow-covered death traps where thousands once died, the filmmakers transformed the Winter War into a chilling tribute to a nation's resilience and the land that both sheltered and swallowed its sons. Red Cliff. John Woo's historical epic Red Cliff dramatizes the legendary Battle of Red Cliffs, a conflict so vast it altered the course of Chinese history. But rather than fake it on a CGI stage, Wu filmed in the Yangtze River Valley, near the same waters where the original battle was waged. You see massive fleets drift through real river channels flanked by towering cliffs, and it's no green screen. The cliffs exist, sacred and scarred. The wind howls the same as it did centuries ago. Ancient temples, craggy hilltops, and dense bamboo forests weren't built, they were found. These real landscapes give the film grandeur and gravity. When flaming arrows fly across the sky, they feel grounded by the geography. Red Cliff isn't just spectacle, it's folklore given form, told where the ancestors once stood. And that authenticity elevates it beyond historical drama. It becomes a living myth. Taguki. Taguki follows two brothers torn apart by the Korean War, and the film grounds its heart-wrenching story just miles from the 38th parallel, where North and South Korea remain divided to this day. Though the DMZ was off-limits, battle scenes were filmed near Paju and Cherwon, towns still echoing with remnants of war. The scorched rice fields, blown-out buildings, and rusting tanks were not props. They were real. The emotional devastation becomes visceral when it's filmed where soldiers once bled and civilians fled. You feel the soil remember. South Korean veterans served as advisors, and in some cases, spectators silently wept during production. The land still whispers its trauma. Taguki is more than a war film. It's a nation's open wound, filmed where the scar tissue first formed. The Battle of Algiers. Shot in the actual Kasbah of Algiers, the Battle of Algiers doesn't just recreate revolution, it relives it. Gillo Pontecorvo filmed the guerrilla resistance against French colonizers in the same labyrinthine alleys where bombings and ambushes had occurred less than a decade earlier. The air still smelled of gunpowder. Many extras were former FLN fighters or locals who had survived the real battles. It gives the film a staggering, almost documentary realism. You're not watching actors. You're watching history reenact itself. Every rooftop, every crowded street, every echo of footsteps on stone was the same terrain that hosted revolution. And you feel it, viscerally. The city breathes resistance. By filming where rebellion once erupted, Pontecorvo didn't just make a war movie, he made a cinematic time bomb, one that still explodes with truth. These 21 war films didn't just tell stories, they stood where history happened. Blood-soaked fields, haunted cities, sacred rivers, each location added power, gravity, and truth. They remind us that war isn't just in the past, it's etched into the earth. And through film, we're invited to remember, on location,